Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Dadas Show, coming to you from Ma Hotel and Suites here in Nairobi. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. As our name suggests, the Dadas Show aspires to promote the spirit of sisterhood and solidarity amongst Kenyan women. We do this by creating an open and a safe platform for women to discuss issues pertaining to their health, their lifestyle, their career, their children, and anything that affects or affects them in one way or another. So today we shall be discussing drug addiction and alcoholism in women. Research shows that men have a higher rate of use and dependence of illicit drugs and alcohol than women do. However, women are just as likely to develop substance use disorder. Now, it's important to note, however, that women often use drugs and alcohol differently. They respond to drugs and alcohol differently and can have unique obstacles to effective treatment. In Kenya, some of these obstacles that we're talking about are victimization, alienation from the family, and of course, a lot of stigma that is associated with drug and substance abuse. Most of these obstacles that women face has largely attributed to so many women not being able to get the assistance that they desperately need. However, today I am joined by two very brave women who have broken the yoke of addiction and are here to share with us their story and the progress that they have made to where they are right now. They are champions to help any woman out there who is going through whatever they're dealing with and how they can be able to get assistance. They are breaking the stereotype that is associated with drug and alcohol abuse, especially amongst women. We are also joined by a counselor who will also give us her knowledge, who will share and enlighten us in regards to the topic of the day. As always, we encourage you at home to take part in this and any other conversation that we may be having at KBC Channel 1. Let us hear your story. What is your take from this episode and any other episode? Give us your feedback, give us your opinion. We always look forward to hearing from you. Before we jump into today's topic, let us have a look at the following feature.
Drug and alcohol abuse is not associated with good health for men or women. However, women can develop substance use disorders more quickly than men. Due to an average lower body mass and lower volume of blood in women, they tend to achieve higher concentrations of alcohol in the blood than men after similar doses. Women's bodies also appear to eliminate alcohol from the blood faster than men's. Additionally, they develop more severe problems and complications from excessive drinking, for instance, liver disease, cardiac-related conditions, hepatitis C, osteoporosis, amongst others.
Drug misuse is when you're using a drug. The drug is meant for the benefit of your body, but you're using it the wrong way. So drug abuse is when it's a condition whereby you're using self-destructive patterns using a substance that you either withdraw from or you're tolerant to.
The variations between men and women suffering from addiction can be caused by biological and sociological differences.
As a woman, we go through different seasons and different patterns in our lives. So the first trigger is trauma that is not dealt with. We have something called post-traumatic disorder. So that affects the way you relate with yourself, the way you relate with others. So for you to be able to cope, you go into substance abuse. So the first trigger is unhealed conditions. That is like trauma. If you've not dealt with trauma, you've not healed from the trauma. So you're going to look for ways to cope with the traumatic event. That leads you to substance abuse, or to substance, we call them the SUDs, the substance use disorders.
While men are more likely to develop a dependency than women, women often develop dependencies faster than men. They are therefore more likely to transition from substance abuse to addiction or dependence. Survivors of abuse may become dependent on alcohol and drugs to manage trauma symptoms or ongoing traumatic events. Unfortunately, even after treatment, the average relapse rate for someone with substance use disorder is over 40%. While little is known about the causes, studies suggest that women are more likely than men to experience intense cravings during both early and late recovery.
So when we talk about challenges that crop up because of substance use, so what we mentioned first is the productivity. So the productivity goes down, which is for the woman and for the man. Then you're not able to relate socially. So let me give you an example. You've ever seen someone who every time they always have outbursts? So because they're under the influence of something. So this outburst, it means you're not able to regulate your emotions. And on a day-to-day basis, if you're not able to regulate your emotions, it means you're going to hurt yourself more and also hurt your environment more.
Women may be diagnosed with dual diagnoses and co-occurring disorders if they are struggling with substance abuse and other mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, and eating disorders while struggling with addiction. Women have a unique set of challenges when it comes to substance use disorders and finding recovery. Women's bodies can react differently to drugs and alcohol and can develop an addiction at a faster rate than men. Women may require additional and different treatment modalities in order to sustain long-term recovery. The sooner you find treatment for yourself or a loved one, the better it will be for your overall health.
To anyone who is battling or you have the challenge of SUDs, the first thing is to know that it's a challenge. It's the same way you can get diabetes, you can get a cold. So the first thing you do is accept, I am in this challenge, I am going through this. Accept that you need help. The moment you accept you need help, so the next thing is, where do you seek help? So you either seek help from counselors. We have counselors who can be able to support you through that process. And also you can also be able to, when it comes to SUDs, we have a lot of detox. So there are hospitals where you can actually get a detoxification, and then you can be able to do a drug test, especially for parents who are suspecting that their children are using the drugs and they're not sure. A drug test will always show you.
Welcome back. As mentioned, joining me today is a lovely and a wonderful, brave panel of ladies who are going to, help me discuss the topic of the day, which is drug addiction and alcoholism in women. Right next to me, I have Caroline Kagea, who is a recovering alcoholic, and she will share with us her journey thus far. Karibu sana, Caroline.
Thank you.
Next to her, I have Beryl Ogutu, who is also a recovering alcoholic, and she'll also share with us the fact that she has come. Karibu sana, Beryl.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Ruth Kiriamana. Kiriamana, have I said it properly?
Sure, yes.
Thank you so much. Who is a counselor focusing on addiction. So, of course, I have to acknowledge my wonderful audience. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking time away from your busy schedule to sit with me as we discuss the topic of the day. I do not take any of your time for granted, and I will look forward to interacting with you during the question and answer session. So to get the ball rolling, let's just jump straight into it. Councillor Ruth, so that we can just be able to put everything in context. What makes, when we started off, we talked about the difference that predominantly men or males are the ones who are afflicted more with drug and substance abuse. However, women also are affected. What is the difference in the addiction between men and women?
The big difference between female and male absorption of substances, mainly alcohol and any other substance, is that we are actually wired differently. As we all well know, men have a higher ability to absorb alcohol. 60% of our bodies are made up of water, and therefore it means men have more water in their bodies biologically, and therefore they are able to absorb alcohol in large amounts than women. However, even men are equally affected. This big difference comes with its own challenges. I was thinking about this like it's like you're putting salt in a sufuria of water, and the bigger the amount there is in this sufuria, it means that that will not be so saturated. And therefore, women, I want us to start thinking of ourselves as having more ability to keep more alcohol into our bodies, and that affects the body so much. There are biological differences, there are social differences, and touching on the social, apart from us having the less ability to absorb the alcohol or the substance, there is also another issue that our bodies get more affected.
Yeah, so thank you for actually expounding for us, you know, the difference between drug and alcohol addiction. You know, we'll come back to you. I mean, there's still so much information that we need to peel off. But before we go so far, like I mentioned, we are joined by two fantastic ladies. And of course, Caroline, I do applaud your courage for being here with us today. You are now a wellness champion. You're also an author. But this was not always the case. You know, kindly share with us your story.
Oh, wow. Where do I start? My story is so long, and I'm wondering with the time. But I started engaging with alcohol at the age of 19. This was after my O-levels. I was privileged to do Form 5 and 6 locally. And prior to that, I'd never touched alcohol. I'd never seen my parents drinking. My parents got born again when I was very young, I think about 10 years. So I used to see alcohol, but I never saw my parents drunk, ever. So for me, my journey with addiction is very interesting because I was saved when I was in Form 2. I think when we're in Form 2, we all get saved. We make these vows to God. I'll get married a virgin. I never touch alcohol. I never touch drugs. For me, drugs was never there, but I had said alcohol and virginity. Form 2. Then I get to Form 5 and I'm like, wow. I got culture shock. Because for the first time in my life, I was seeing kids, because we were kids really, at the age of 18, 19. I was seeing kids smoking, and they're not hiding. And they're even smoking together with the lecturers. And then I'm even seeing girls, black girls, smoking. Me, the only girls I'd ever seen smoking were not black, and it was on TV. You get? So then I meet with this crowd, and especially one particular person who wanted to be my friend, and I couldn't understand why. Because she was very popular. I knew I was not. She was very beautiful. I didn't think I was. And she wanted to become my friend. So we became friends, and she was a smoker. And for her, she started smoking at the age of 15. And she was black. She's deceased now, from what I hear, from what I've heard. So she introduced me to my first cigarette. And her brand was a brand I never liked, so I moved to menthol. And I stuck with menthol cigarettes for 19 straight years. I got addicted to cigarettes almost immediately. By the time I was getting to Form 6, I was actually doing 2 packets of cigarettes. That's without alcohol. Then she discovers I've never drank. And
you and your Form 2 vow.
Me and my Form 2, and not even that. Where was I getting alcohol from? The only person I'd seen drinking in our family was my immediate follower. And he had told me, Carol, the time you'll start drinking, come, I'll give you tips. Okay. And me had said, surely, this guy, if mommy catches you, you're in trouble. Of course, at home, I can't smoke because, surely, who smokes at home? But I was so the intensity, the craving for cigarettes was so high that chewing gum stopped working. So I'd spray my mouth with perfume, literally, when I know my mother or my father is somewhere in the compound. The times that I didn't have money, I think I used to steal money. I think I started stealing when I was young. We used to have hay, so I'd roll hay. I'd seen a worker. He would put hay in a paper and then light it up. So me and my brother, we are the ones who started this madness in our family. So one time we were busted because my mother was driving in, and as she was driving in, as we were busy trying to inhale grass, now we feared her with the fear of God. So we put those things in our pockets without even switching them off properly.
Oh dear.
Suffice to say, see, we were busted. Yes. Of course, we were beaten. So now I became a very active smoker. I didn't drink again until Form 6. And in Form 6, I remember we went out. Now, me, my best friend, and my new boyfriend, they took me to some place in Westlands. I think I cheated my parents, I'm going for a kesha or something. Then my best friend tells me, remember last year, Carol, I brought you wine, you didn't get high. Let's see what happens today. So they buy me alcohol, they buy, there was a certain cider then, those days. So it took the 6th can to get me out. 6 cans straight. And the next thing I remember is waking up in their home. Because I blacked out, I don't even know how we got home. I was shaking, I was throwing up. I said, I didn't even know that is what is called withdrawals and hangovers and all those things. All I know is that I was so sick, and I said, I'll never touch alcohol again.
Yes.
But we are told never say never. You have a way of attracting what you negate. So I was privileged the following year to leave to go and study in Malaysia.
Yes.
My parents were not wealthy. Those days we used to do something called harambes. So all my relatives came together. I think going to Kuala Lumpur was costing almost 800,000. So the idea was for me to go and study advertising, multimedia and broadcasting. I was to do 2 years in Malaysia, 2 years in Australia. And also pave the way for the rest of my siblings, because I'm the firstborn. But on getting to Kuala Lumpur, I knew I was not going to survive here. I didn't fit in.
Yes.
I just didn't want. And so my party life became, I started partying really hard. In fact, I found so many Kenyans and people from other countries there. And of course, now, you know, when you start drinking so much, automatically you'll start cutting classes.
Yes.
So the lecturers would write back home and tell my dad, your daughter is not coming to class, what's going on? So my dad would send me an email to tell me he's going to call me. This is in 2001 when mobiles had just checked in.
Yes.
So of course I knew when they are calling, Caro is sober. Then I'm like, what are the lecturers saying? Maybe people are not understanding each other because of the communication barrier.
Yes.
Immediately that phone is down, out, the 7-Eleven. So, and then of course now I made more friends on that side. I used to go to different states to party. My housemates, you can't live in Malaysia alone as a student. It's extremely expensive. It's ridiculous. So you come together, you're many, and you're all housed in the school complexes. I remember once when I was going, and that was like 2 days before I had had a near fatal car accident. One housemate told me, Carol, we are not going to watch you die. So if you go, you'll come and find we have all left. And that means you'll have to go back home. I thought it was a joke. I took a train, went to a different state. I had made a new boyfriend there. And on coming back, I found the apartment empty. Guys had gone. And they said, we wish you all the best. What did that mean? At the end of that year, I had to come back home. Yes. So my parents were so annoyed, especially my mom. And my mom had said, now there's no more school, you'll stay and start rearing the cows. But my dad was able to talk to her, and I went to school and I joined the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication and Air Travel and Related Studies. I did a double diploma for 3 years, back to back. Very intense, and I did very well. In my first 2 years, I was a very good girl. I got saved again. You know, we get saved all over and over and over, over and over. You go and cry before God and you say, Napa ya kwamba. Joined the choir. I was a choir member in Sita Mngong. And I was a very good girl, the scholar KIMC. In the last year, I decided to become a boarder. In the last term, that's how tunambiangwa kashetani kengine kanakujanga.
Kanatokea pahali kwa kona, yes.
I became a boarder. All my roommates were drunkards. So they would go out after classes on Friday. They would come on Saturday. They would find me with my Bible on the bed, telling them, "Ni watu, okokeni tu." And they insult me. One Friday I decided, surely, let me just go out and drink soda.
Yes.
with these girls. So I told them, let's go. See, we go. I even volunteered to pay for the cab. They told me, Caro, are you sure? I said, yes. We went to Kenya Cinema. Kenya Cinema is the place that used to say those days. Hey, me, I've started with my Fanta Kubwa #1, finished it. I'm saying, guys, Fanta Kubwa #2. I asked myself, surely, how much soda can I drink? Guys are getting happy. Me, I'm just chilling. Then I asked my friend over there, her name is Jackie. I told her, so just put for me kidogo of that thing you're drinking. She said, are you sure? I said, yes. Do you know, we left Kenya Cinema on Sunday, and we had checked in on Friday. We checked in on, we left on Sunday. I was so guilty, but that was just the beginning of my journey in addiction, a journey that has taken me 20 years. Yeah.
Now, Caroline, just to sum everything up on your journey, I know the journey, a decade is a while. What was your epiphany moment? Because you've had a couple of them. When was the final one and you said, Apana, this is not the life for me, please?
After I went to rehab the second time. The first time was voluntary, the second time was involuntary. But that's when it hit me that this is crazy. It's a cycle. And it has to be broken. Unfortunately, it has hit 3 people in our family. But I decided enough was enough. After the rehab, the second rehab experience was a wake-up call for me. The first one was out of desperation because I'd hit rock bottom. I mean, I was losing jobs. I had sold everything in my house. There are stories I've told people where I even sold the doors to my house. You know, I'd sold everything. You know the way men sell things?
Yes.
Now me as a woman, I was selling everything. I'd had 2 miscarriages back to back because of alcohol. I mean, I had seen what it had done to some of my friends who have children who've been drinking through their pregnancies, and those kids are born with something called fetal alcohol syndrome, FASD.
Yes.
I have seen it, even in closer circles, you know. And so for me, the second relapse was just, for me, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even it's funny, because even after the first relapse, when I came out of rehab, people were still looking for me to speak about this thing.
Yes.
And I realized it's bigger than what we're even talking about. So for me, that was the wake-up call for me.
And thank God for that. Beryl, you're also making very huge strides in your own space. You know, you help people and families affected by drug and alcohol addiction. Though at some point you were affiliated by this. Please, just share with us your journey.
Okay, thank you very much. Mine was a complete opposite of Caroline. I grew up in a family that was very dysfunctional, emotionally bad environment. My dad was a Catholic, my mom was an Anglican. They were consumers of alcohol. So alcohol was all over the house. Vodka, smell of vodka in the fridge. When they invite their friends, there's alcohol. So I started experimenting on alcohol at a very early age, even before 12 years old. The first time it was that disgusting taste, but it got better. I started adjusting to it. So I am also a byproduct of a series of unfortunate events. I lost my dad when I was 12 years old. My mom was a housewife all her life. She didn't know how to fend for us. When I completed my class 8, which I did very well, I was a very brilliant girl in our school. When people were joining Form 1, I couldn't because of school fees. So when I was left back at home, the crowd that walikuwa when you wanahang kwa estate, that bad crowd is the crowd I got involved in. So I started hanging out with the wrong crowds. So they introduced me to jam session. Those days, we used to go to F2, New York, you know, all those places, Hollywood. And there is when I was introduced to smoking. I started smoking cigarettes. And that was it. I was 14 years old. So I got a sponsor, went to school in Kakamega. The environment was also very traumatizing for me because I grew up in a middle-class family where everything was provided. And being taken to a school huko katikati ya Bundu where you go and fetch water from the river. It was traumatizing for me. But I continued with school, still joining the wrong kind of group, self-esteem issues, because of also the trauma that I went through when I was young. I'm a third born in a family of 5, the middle child, the forgotten child, where you have to do things exceptionally well for you to be recognized. So I grew up with that syndrome of feeling my siblings are better than me. Yes. So Form 3, I left that school because of lack of school fees. My uncle took me in another school in Awasi, still struggled with my education. When I was just about to do my Form 4, my mother passed on. And they didn't tell me that my mom was very ill for a long time. So when I heard that my mom had passed on, my initial feeling was anger. I was so much angry with my family, my uncles, my aunties, because my uncle knew my mom was sick when I was doing my class 8 and he didn't tell me. So my response was rebellion. I rebelled against my family. I started drinking to annoy them. So nilikuwa nakunywa, nikashikana sasa na the worst crowd. At that time I was living with my grandmother in Kisumu. I got involved with the worst crowd, the people when watu wana point wale wasichana usi get involved with them because that one has already aborted. That one, you know, those kind of talks. So I got arrested for the first time when I was 17 years old. Yes. And when I was bailed out, that is when my family sat down and discussed. They actually realized I have a big problem. And they made arrangements for me to go and live with my uncle in Ngong. So I went to Ngong, lived with my uncle. My uncle at that time was single, got married. Since he was my favorite uncle, I felt displaced by my auntie. So I went to live with my auntie in Kibera, my other auntie in Kibera. So you know the environment in Kibera, the ghetto, the environment. Drugs are all over, alcohol is all over. So I continued drinking. By the time I realized, because also the environment at my auntie's place was not conducive for me, I ran from my auntie's place and I went to start living in the streets. By 18 years, I was introduced by one of my friends to Maisha, the street life, the life of money. So I did that. I did that to fund my addiction. Yes. And because at the back of my head, I knew what I was doing was wrong, I drank to silence exactly the voices that were telling me, Susan, what you're doing is wrong. Yeah. When I began drinking, it was the normal high-class drugs. By the time I knew, I'd moved from drinking Shiva's Regal. I remember that time I thought I was going for 600 shillings. And 600 shillings was a lot of money. Yes. I'd gone to drinking Changa at that point. So for me to fund that lifestyle, it also means that I had to engage in some bad activities. Yes. I started stealing, drugging people in clubs, and doing all sorts of things. I was arrested so many times mpaka police stations zingine. Ilikuwa nikikuja wananiambia umerudi. Afande umerudi. Wananiambia niko. We used to even drink tea together before they forward me to the cells. Yes. So that's how bad it got. So in the process of it all, I started having serious withdrawals when I don't drink. Yes. I had moved from the stage of experimenting to using socially to using as an instrument to deal with the pain that I was feeling, to the point now I was completely dependent on it.
Yes.
So I was using to live and living to use. If I don't take alcohol, I would have hallucinations, delusions, tremors. There sometimes I'll feel like there are like spiders crawling on my skin, vomiting, shakes. Because for me, it wasn't only alcohol. The more I got introduced to the wrong kind of crowd, the more I was introduced to many drugs.
Yes.
By that time, I was also smoking bang. I was using ndovu, for people who know what ndovu is. At that point, I'd even gone to the extent of using the ruara. So I was introduced to so many other drugs. So in the absence of alcohol, I was using another drug to get me high until the time I'll get money to get alcohol.
Yeah.
My story is very long.
Yeah.
Long story short, my sister took me in. That is after I had tried to commit suicide. She took me in. We had a discussion. I told her, Viv, you know what, the Lord rest her soul in peace because she passed on. I told her, I have tried so many things, as Carol has said. Me, I tried Christianity. I even became a Muslim. I went to the Legio Marias because I was looking for a solution to my problem.
Yes.
Because it reaches a point where you feel you're bewitched. You feel like there's something that is not right with you. Yes. You're asking yourself, why is it only me and my siblings are doing so well? So I tried so many things to get out of it. And fortunately, at that time, my sister had a friend who was a counselor. And she told her, have you ever asked your sister whether she has an alcohol problem? Yes. And she said no. So I was involved in the conversation, and I told them for the longest time, I've tried to quit alcohol because I also have a dream. I have a vision. There's something I want to achieve out of life. I used to really admire the way I would see women walking around wearing makeup, clean clothes, lipstick. It reached, kwa sababu mimi nilikuwa nimeshafika point I wasn't even showering. I was a street girl because of alcohol. Yeah. So I was taken to rehab the first time. Oh my God, I was so happy because I felt for the first time I understood my problem. Yes. And I felt that I had the right kind of support to help me out of it. So I went for rehab the first time. After that, I did what is called recovery coaching. I became a recovery coach, and I started helping people who are in early treatment to adjust to the environment, and also doing some sessions in treatment centers. So I was employed by the first treatment center I went to.
Yes.
As a very young person in this professional, I lost a client who was given to me as, we have what we call individual therapy sessions. So we somehow developed a bond. So when he died, it really hit me hard. If at that time I was debriefed, if I'd gone through supervision, it wouldn't have turned out the way it turned out. I went to rehab 6 times. And every time I would go, I would tell myself, this is the last time. And funny enough, in all those treatment centers, I was the only lady. The only lady.
Which is something, which is something, very sorry for cutting you short, which is something that we do need to explore a little bit when we were talking about some of the obstacles that women go through in search of treatment. Now, Councillor, before we go on break, what are some of the factors that lead to, we've already touched on a little bit about self-esteem issues. We've already touched on trauma. What are other, some of the factors that lead to drug and substance abuse, especially in women? Briefly, please.
Thank you for that question. Well, the obvious one is the genetic predisposition. Like I imagine Caroline, from her story that I've read and what she has shared, she could be genetically predisposed. This means that you're born with that affinity towards drugs. So the first time you try, you're not given the opportunity to go through the stages. Remember, she talked of experimental, social, instrumental, habitual, and then compulsive. Most of the people have the opportunity to change at the habitual stage because you contemplate. Family is meeting and they are discussing you. They are telling you you have a problem. But because you don't know, you just continue. You think they are trying to cut off your freedom. But now, there are these people who they go to experimental day one, then they jump to compulsive. They cannot stop. And that's the biggest issue that people don't know. When you're being introduced by maybe that lady, this lady didn't have the problem because at the end of the day, she will smoke and get off it, go to class, perform and all that. But for you, it's quite of impossible. The other thing is the social reinforcers. You heard what my sister here said. She said that every time I wanted to, maybe even I'm thinking of stopping, something happens, the traumas, the deaths, no debriefing, no that. So the social reinforcers are always there. No, not even just the positive ones, but things that are happening to your life. So many a times we always encourage that when you're going through a serious issue, sometimes even good issues, good things, like some people will get married, they were not drinking, but because of this kind of a stressor, it's a positive thing, but it's a stressor, they'll start drinking. So we must be able to differentiate when something good has happened and it's stressing us. And it's not just the usual good stress. So managing stress is also another thing. Maybe another thing is just the struggles with life, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and especially anxiety goes very well with substance use because you go to a place and you feel panicky, you're shaking. And so to stop that, you just take something to help you. So those kind of, plus now the self-esteem, which is a common problem with women, not just with, Africans, we must say for sure we're predisposed to having a low self-esteem from historical perspectives. But when it comes to women, they suffer from it more because we are always, it's like you should be seen and not hand. And as you push yourself, the society is also pushing you back. And so for me, those are really, really the real things that cause many women get into substance use.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ruth. I think that's a good place for us to go on a break, and then we'll come back for the question and answer session. Don't go far away. Welcome back to the Dadas Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just getting into the question and answer session. Remember, we look forward to hearing your feedback. So let us know what you think of this episode and any other on all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1. So to start us off on this session, we have Juliet. Juliet, karibu sana.
Okay, thank you. My question goes to Caroline. So what are these major factors that cause women not to get the help that they need as they're tackling this drug addiction?
One, there's denial. Nobody ever thinks they have a problem. Even the people who are sleeping in the trenches, if you ask them, they still don't think they have a problem. And then now for women, it's the stigma associated with being a woman and you're an alcoholic. I don't know why women, alcoholism and prostitution are all tied together. And in hindsight, they are not related in any way. So there's the shame. Alcoholism amongst women, in my view, is looked at the way we used to look at HIV and AIDS in the 90s. Mm-hmm. It was discussed chini ya maji. But the fact of the matter is, Beryl and I are just a few examples of the women who have struggled and are struggling with this thing. So it's the shame also, the family thing. You know, parents, especially mothers, have a way of hiding their daughters. What will people in the church say? What will people in the community say? They'll say, I raised my child badly. For me, I know that thing really bothered my parents for a long time until they came to realize it had nothing to do with them. It was just the way things played out. So it's the shame, there's denial, there's fear, there's anxiety. But shame is the biggest word. Yeah, I'm a woman. Kwanza, like me, when I first publicly came out, okay, I think I'm just different. I don't know about burial. Me, I was not ashamed. I spoke about it and it opened a can of worms. I got to realize so many people are struggling with this thing. Even female pastors. They preach on Sunday, in the evening they're calling Glovo or Jumia to drink in the house. So it's all those aspects. But there's no shame associated with this thing. There is no shame. Beryl and I are here, and look at us. We are whole. We are healthy. We have family. We have lives. There's no shame talking about it.
Thank you so much. So, you know, I think it's even something, and those are some of the things that we're trying to break. And of course, I have to applaud you, ladies, for having the courage to come, because everybody will be sitting down. Ai, utaenda uambie watu, ai, nini. So I love what Dina has said. There is absolutely no shame in admitting that you have a problem and also getting the help. And of course, once we get rid of the shame, then the factors that are stopping women from getting help will definitely reduce. Asante sana, Juliet. I hope your question has been answered. So next we have a question from Michelle.
Thank you so much. My question goes to Beryl. You've talked of you being the only woman at your rehabilitation center, right? And my question is, do you think women are getting adequate or even support, like safe housing or rehabilitation centers, as well as counseling personnel? If not, what can the government do?
As we know, there are so many safe houses, there are so many rehabilitation centers, but not many treatment centers in Kenya offer treatment to women. The trauma that we have gone through, having a trauma-informed treatment or therapy is very important. And also we have the issue of stigma. We've talked about stigma. Many women don't come out because they're asking themselves, what will people think? What will people think about me? The sad bit about the situation right now is we have more women who are weed users than alcoholics, because weed cannot be detected by smell. And you can just smoke haraka and come back and do your things. So I have handled so many married women who are at home. Immediately they drop their children to school, they wash out their weed, and they're on weed the whole day. There's a man who came to me for therapy and told me, my wife is always happy. Always happy. Eh? And I wonder why. Kumbe it is weed. Okay? And also she's using the weed to deal with some of the issues that she's having in the family. Remember, women have been, there's this mentality that women are strong. You know, mothers, you have to be strong for your children. So even if you're going through abuse, you're going through probably challenges, you don't come out and say it forth to people, but you look for other ways of dealing with those issues. So the stigma surrounding around it. And what I can just say to the government is to increase the funding to rehabilitation centers. Because some of the centers will say, I will receive that one woman, but that one woman will take up a whole room. Who will pay? Because these rooms are supposed to take in 4 clients, okay? They don't have that space. That space, because of the limited resources, even the money, they have to use every single space of the treatment facility. Partnering with NGOs to have support groups, counseling women is very important. Making it accessible to every woman, where a woman can just check in, hapo tu karibu, they go and talk to somebody about the issues that they have. Okay? And lastly, I believe that what the government needs to do is to sensitize, do a lot of sensitization, especially to the people on the ground.
Thank you so much, Beryl. That's really, really well put. And I hope the powers that be, and even you at home, can be able to approach this with a different set of eyes, you know, with a different perspective. I love what she has said. Stop looking at female alcoholism as a moral problem. It is a disease, just like any other disease. And finally, we have a question or a comment from Glories. Glories?
Thank you so much. My question goes to our Councillor Ruth. So what are the telltale signs for a woman that is addicted?
I like that question very much. Like, we're talking about the women at home in Igeshagi with the Moratinas and all that. What are the telltale signs? How do you know your auntie, your uncle, your sister, your wife is actually going down that path?
Thank you so much for that question. It is important for us to remember that alcoholism or addiction is a kind of a relapsing disease where you try to stop and you put yourself into a situation where you say, I'm not going to repeat it again, and you find yourself going back again. So when you see that you're not being able to cut the links with whatever you're ingesting, then that means you are addicted, so inability to stop. 2, the way that people look at you and tell you there's something wrong, and then you say, me, nothing. Denial, it was mentioned earlier. It's one of the things that really even reinforce substance use. You just tell yourself, this is a small problem. Shinda kidogo, I just did that today, I'll stop. But you are not able to stop. Then the other thing is when you realize that, especially for women, every woman will care about herself. But when a woman wakes up, they don't dress up well, they don't clean themselves, they just move from one den to another, or they are taking these substances in their house, because as she said rightly, drugs, especially for women, it's not out there in the bar, but in their cabinets. And just another thing is that so many children are also introduced through that cabinet whiskey place. So it is important for us to realize that when somebody is neglecting themselves, self-care is zero. They wake up, the first place they go is to where they can get the substance. The other thing is, especially when it's critical, what you call kutoa lock, it's a real lock. It locks, they are not able to take breakfast. So if somebody is waking up to the first thing they have to do is the substance of their choice, then that means they are really, really addicted. So there are these things that you watch and say, no, the way you're drinking it, it's not the way we do it. And also, maybe as a real sign even before people get addicted, the level of tolerance. Remember, Carol said, 5 cans. Nothing is happening. And that time she wasn't even an alcoholic. Yes. This means there's something bigger than herself that is consuming this substance. Anytime you hear somebody saying, I took this much and nothing happened, please pity them. Because the next level they're going to is into addiction. So the level of tolerance is very important. Having said that, let me just say, the best way to prevent ourselves from getting addicted is to abstain. Because you don't know your genetic makeup. You don't know the kinds of substances that are there. Like, come to marijuana. There are so many types of the way they are made. The people are adding everything. Why do people want to choose that corner and not the other one? It means there is something that has been added to that corner that is so sweet, and really that is causing a higher. So we need to really rethink, especially as women, how we take care of ourselves. Otherwise, this is a disease. I want to say that addiction is a relapsing disease. You come back to it, you say, I'm going to stop, but you are not able to stop.
Yeah.
So that's very important to know it's a disease.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ruth. I believe everybody has been able, I believe your question has also been answered. So before we close, I would like to invite, you know, my formidable ladies to give us one parting shot, because maybe there's a lady who's at home who has been able to, you know, or members of the family who've been able to denote and say, hiya, by the way, perhaps this person is actually going through this. What would you like to tell them, you know, in just a few words for both of you? What is the parting shot in regards to someone who's watching at home and is going through what you went through?
My parting shot is that there's no shame. I'll repeat it again. There's no shame in coming out and speaking about your problem. And if you have a problem, seek help. I want to speak to parents, especially mothers, because I fight with mothers almost every day. Mothers, stop hiding your daughters. If you know you have a child, a daughter who is struggling with alcohol, and you know because you're a mother, you know, stop burying your head in the sand. Get help for that child before it's too late. There are so many women I know who hide, especially church women. There's a problem with church folk. I don't know why. You're hiding your child, and yet your child is suffering. I had a client in Karen who hid her daughter until the day that girl died. The girl died, and the girl had been sanctioned to go for treatment. She died in the house with a Johnny Walker at her bedside. That's when the mother realized this thing is big. So it is important to realize that alcoholism amongst women is growing at a very worrying upward trajectory. And unless we shout about it the way we are doing now, in the next 5 years, I don't know where as a nation we are going to be. So speak out, reach out for help. Help is available. As long as you're watching this Kipindi, help is available.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we need to give a round of applause for that. Thank you so much, Caroline. And then, yeah. Yes, dear.
Beryl.
Beryl.
Yes, you can only find a solution to a problem if you identify the problem. So the first step is accept that you have a problem. One of the quickest ways of knowing whether you have a problem, we call it cage. Have you tried to cut down? Do you get angry when people talk to you about your drinking? Do you feel guilty about your drinking habits? Do you need an eye opener every morning, or that fast smoke before you do anything? Try out those 4 questions, and if they are all correct, then you need help. Reach out, get to a professional, and I repeat, a professional. Look at the credentials, whether that person has the competency to deal with your issues. So reach out to a professional and make sure that you check yourself in. If it has reached a point where you feel that you cannot do it at home, check yourself into a rehabilitation center. And one thing that I would say, for myself, I struggled for a very long time, and my family never gave up on me. The 6 times I went to rehab, they always showed up. So as a family, I'm also talking for the ones who are affected, that don't give up on your loved ones. We are sitting here with Carol because our families never gave up on us. The last time my family came to Rokota me from Pipeline, I was moving from one bar to another, waiting to die. But they still reached out and took me to a treatment center. And that is why I am standing here today. And another thing is also to the stakeholders, especially to the government, fund rehabilitation centers so that women can have access to treatment. That is what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beryl. By a round of applause for Beryl. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of today's very interactive and informative session. And I hope it has been as informative to you, for you as it has been for me. Now, here is my 2 cents in today's topic. It's very easy to pass judgment. It's very easy to cast away and to alienate any woman, man, actually anyone, man or woman, going through any drug and substance abuse. What we don't realize is that you know, the effects of active addiction roll over further than just the person who's afflicted. They will affect the families, they will affect the friends, they will affect society. So if you or your loved one is experiencing drug and substance addiction and you feel like this person needs help, like Caroline very rightfully said, there is absolutely no shame. Hold your head up high. You have taken the biggest and the most important step by acknowledging that there is a problem. My sister has a problem, my mother has a problem, my cousin has a problem, and get the help you deserve. So on behalf of my wonderful team at KBC Channel 1, and of course my location partners, Ma Hotel and Suites, and myself, Ashiko Mbune, I wish you a very supportive and reliable week. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.